To kick us off with a discussion, we have Bernhard Marr, who's the CEO and co-founder of the eponymous Bernhard Marr, and Dan Jevons, who's the head of data science at Shell. So we'll be in conversation for about 20 minutes here. Gentlemen, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Bernhard Marr, and basically I do three things. I help organizations with their strategy and their digital transformation, especially around AI and machine learning and emerging technology. The second thing is I write. I have a regular column in Forbes, and I also have written a few books, and the most recent one is called Artificial Intelligence in Practice, where we look at 50 different companies and how they actually use AI in practice. And the third thing is I run workshops and speak. And one of my clients was Shell, and they came along and said, Bernhard, can you help us with our data strategy? And this is when I met Dan, and they are doing some amazing stuff now. And I thought this session would be a really good opportunity to share some of the things that I think makes a good data strategy, and then actually hear from Dan how they've put this into practice in Shell. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Well, it's great to be here, and great to see you again. So I'm Dan Jevons. I'm the general manager for data science within our technology group at Shell. That's a group of about 150 people, worldwide, spread across 4 global locations. Basically, the group is focused on trying to develop and deploy AI solutions across our value chain. And it's a really exciting time in our industry. We're right in the midst of an energy transition. We're also trying to maintain a really competitive proposition to the market, and actually AI is a huge enabler for that. So I'm really enjoying what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that every company needs an AI strategy today. And why is artificial intelligence important to Shell?
Well, I think, if you look at our industry and our company, historically, we've done a lot of work in this space anyway. So our statistics group goes right back to the 1970s. Shell's renowned for our scenario planning. So to some extent, this is familiar ground for us. But of course, there's a lot that's very new. And what we've tried to do internally is we recognized about 4 years ago that actually there was a step change in this space. And so we brought together a group to try and bring together an integrated view of this across the enterprise. That's evolved into what we now call Shell.ai, which is a board-sponsored top-down initiative, which is trying to drive AI solutions right across the value chain. And I guess, as I mentioned, the challenge that's in front of us as an industry is really fundamental. We're in a position where climate change is real. It's starting to really hit home. We have to change. We've got to be able to decarbonize. We've got to be able to also meet the world's energy needs, which are really important. And we see that actually AI is one of the big levers to do that. So from a business perspective, actually, if we're able to deploy digital solutions and AI across our value chain, we could probably reduce emissions down to around 2015 levels. That's about 20% reduction. That's an incredible opportunity for a business like ours.
Yeah, absolutely. So I said I believe AI strategies are something every business needs to take very seriously at the moment. When I help companies develop AI strategies, what we do is we approach this very strategically. For me, this is the most important message,
Absolutely.
I think, of this session, that your AI strategy has to reflect your business strategy. And quite often, it means that you have to rethink your current business strategy. So quite often when I work with organizations, they might have a business strategy in place. But when you then realize the opportunities around AI and what this is offering, that this is sometimes actually challenging their business model, where you have to seriously rethink what you do, the products you're offering, the service you're offering, and how you operate internally. And basically, when I work with companies, what we do is we approach this from 2 angles. So I find this really useful. The first one is to look at the customer perspective. So you look at, okay, what are the products, what are the services that you are delivering, are you producing at the moment? And how could you use AI to make them more intelligent, make them smarter? And I believe that nowadays consumers want smarter products. The second perspective is that you then look inside your own organization to really look at how do we operate as a business, what are the key business processes that we run, and then you figure out how you can use AI to streamline them, to make them more efficient and more effective. So these are really good angles to look at in the context of your own strategic challenges. And if you look at companies like Nike, for example, this is a good example. I've done some recent work with them, and Nike, for example, are thinking now, how can we make smarter products? So they are now thinking about putting AI and IoT technology into their trainers to give people feedback on their running styles. They now have, at the same time, they're saying we want to make the buying process better, so they now have an app that allows you to scan your foot to give you the exact size of your foot, so you can then order a trainer that will actually fit. At the same time, they then have to rethink the back-end processes around this. So this is then the internal perspective. We say it's all well and good having great apps, great products, but how do we then streamline the back end to be able to deliver maybe customized IoT, internet-connected trainers that have AI capability in them, and actually then are bringing back a lot of the manufacturing from Indonesia, from China, back into the US and Europe, because they can automate the production, they can potentially use 3D printing in the future. So this is for me an example of really looking at your business strategically, looking at those two angles and then using it in practice. And for me, when you do this, what I find in practice is that lots of organizations play around with AI. It's like a bit of the fear of missing out, where you're saying we need to do something around AI. So they have hundreds of little AI projects in place, but there's nothing really strategic. So for me, you have to have at least one, maybe up to 5 strategic level use cases, as well as a few quick wins. This is, I think, really important, that you have between 1 and 3 projects that you can deliver some real value in within 3 months or so. So a small number of high-level strategic longer-term projects and a few quick wins. And then for each of the use cases, you then identify what does this mean in terms of the data we need, in terms of the technology, the skills we need, the implementation challenges around this. And I actually have a template that you can download from my website at bernhardmarr.com, where it gives you the steps that you go through to define an AI use case. So I think we use this approach in Shell. So maybe you can share some of the things that some of the use cases in Shell.
Well, I think we love the framework because it gave a structure to some of the things we were already thinking about and some of the things we were already doing, but it also highlighted quite a few things that we hadn't fully done. I think for us, one of the big challenges is, and you made the point, this technology cuts across lines of business. So if you look at the way in which we're trying to deploy it, we're trying to look at it from a data perspective, tied to our business strategy, and look at what it enables in our business model. So what we've done is we've created 3 cross-business themes. So we talk about subsurface and wells, assets and customers. And within each of those, we're trying to look at what does this enable and how does it change things. And I thought I'd just share a couple of brief examples. So one area that we're looking at, we operate a very physical value chain. The loop behind me is just showing some elements of that and trying to demonstrate to you some of the assets that we work in all the time. These are big, massive structures with miles and miles of pipeline that are very much set up to try to produce vast quantities of oil and gas and also into the power space now as well. And I think, if you look at this, trying to be able to identify issues with those assets, trying to reduce the emissions of those assets, trying to optimize the performance of those assets, to identify things before they go wrong, all of those are huge business opportunities. So if I look at the asset roadmap as an example, what we've tried to do is look across lines of business that traditionally haven't talked to each other. So, wind farms, people producing chemicals, areas in manufacturing, and also what we call integrated gas, which is our gas business, and also obviously traditional oil production. And we're trying to look at that and say, what are the use cases that apply to all of those things? And it's quite simple things. It's things like, can we predict failure across all of this? can we also try to optimize the output, the performance of these things? Can we look at potential anomalies, things like gas leaks? Can we limit those and reduce those? And so those use cases, what's great is that we can get the businesses coming together around those use cases and to think backwards from that and look at what that means for their processes, for their proactive technical monitoring, for their reliability engineers, for their operators. So we're going through that process at the moment. And the other really cool thing is we can bring it together onto one platform. So the common thing from a data perspective is that all of this is about time series, whether it's pressure or temperature or rotation speed, and all of that's recorded on these assets. So if we bring that together and then apply algorithms to it, actually you can start to leverage the synergies across those businesses. But I think what's also interesting is if you look at some of our new businesses, it's equally relevant. So we're starting to move very quickly into the power space. We're also looking at electric charging, trying to optimize that as well, trying to make it cheaper and greener for the customer to charge with Shell. And so those types of things also are very disruptive to our value chain. And it's the same there. What we're trying to do is bring retail and our new energies and our power and our trading groups together to look at this as an integrated value chain and then to start to design the platform technology and the optimization so it works across all of that from the get-go, and the way we set up these new organizations take advantage of AI. So I think that's really exciting. But I guess one of the things we've struggled with that's really hard about this is firstly it's disruptive, right? As you said, Bernhard, it cuts across value chains. But it's also, I think, something that's not just about the technology, it's also about business. And I know this is something you've thought a lot about, so I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on that.
Yes, for me what is key is that organizations then look at the various different use cases, and then for me the use cases shouldn't stand on their own. They should be an overarching strategy that combines them. So when you look at every individual use case, you then look at, okay, what's the business case for this individually? What are the business metrics this is actually linking to you? So you actually identify the KPIs that this is helping you to deliver on. And once you've done this, you're clear about the business impact of this use case, and you're clear about some of the data you need, some of the technology. You then look across all your key use cases, and then you say, okay, are there some common issues? And for me, every use case needs data. So this is then the foundation for your data strategy. You say, okay, what does this mean now for my entire business? Can we consolidate this all into one coherent data strategy? Same for technology. You then look at your technology stack and say, is this ready for this? Instead of using individual use cases, you look across all of them and say, can we combine them into a few where we can use similar technologies, similar data, integrate all of this, align all of this. The same around skills. I think this is another important issue that we then need to figure out what are the skills gap in our organizations. And I know around technology, Shell has made big progress. When we started this project, I think what was interesting is that we had to go back and say, let's actually clarify the business strategy.
That's right.
What are the KPIs we're hooking this into? And once this was done, the whole project became a lot easier.
I think that's right. And I think, it was interesting for us having that external perspective, because one of the things you often assume is that you know your KPIs. And I think that's true to a certain extent, but the KPIs we had were not necessarily the ones that were going to drive us down this route of digital and AI technology and enabling that fully across the business. So we actually ended up going right back and saying, well, are we looking at the right levers? And actually, one of the things that came out was this piece of roadmap work to try to say, where are we going with all of this? How are we moving forwards? And can we start with a piece of business strategy before we start with the technology?
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's also about culture, and I know you've thought a lot about that as well. We've been really struggling with how do you create a culture where the business is ready to embrace this. And that's tough in big organizations that are not set up for AI. Maybe, I know you've got some examples and some thoughts about that.
Yeah, lots of them. And for me, culture is a challenge, because I think in lots of organizations, because we approach AI in the wrong way, people then become scared. They're scared that this is changing their organization, it's changing the business structures, it's changing their jobs, and suddenly you have a real difficult hill to climb. And I think what I feel Shell is doing really well is creating this community and having this ongoing conversation. Because for me, we can't stop this AI train. Right. This train has left the station. It is steaming ahead. If organizations don't do this well, they will simply be left behind. At the same time, we need to do this all in the right way. We need to do this ethical. And this is another key component for me, that we are looking at some of the ethical and legal components of AI. So this has to be part of your AI strategy. Right. And maybe you can talk about some of the communities you've created and how you've engaged, because this is a really good example.
Well, I think for us it's been fundamental, and actually I got lucky. One of the first things we did, partly just for expediency, was we brought together all the people that were interested in what we then called advanced analytics, which is now what we refer to as AI across the company. And that network's now about 2,000 people across Shell. It meets about 3 times a month, and it's a really broad sharing community. So we talk about the legal and ethical issues. We also have code on screen sessions, and we have technology sessions on the latest Kubeflow and Kubernetes capabilities that we're developing through our platform. Yeah. So it's that massive diversity, but actually just in the sharing within the community, it creates commonality and shared understanding. And I think the other thing is, for many companies, we actually have quite a technical community that potentially can reskill for this. So, in our subsurface and our assets, we've got engineers and, PhDs in geology and petrophysics that actually can be reskilled to take advantage of these new AI technologies. And so that's really important to try and harness the talent that's within. And I guess one final thing that's been really key for us is bringing, the compliance and legal functions with us. Yeah. Because if you don't do that, you end up not understanding that perspective. And so we've actually created a working group which includes legal, what we call information risk management, and also representatives of the business that are responsible for the business data, as well as some IT folks. And that community is looking at how do we grant access, where do we limit the use of data within the organization. But I think it's important maybe to say also, failure's key, right? I mean, it's very easy to sit here and, think about all the things we're getting right, but we've also got a lot wrong along the way. And I know you've talked a lot about the importance of failure in organizations, and maybe you want to reflect on that, and I'm also happy to share some stories.
Yeah, I think I would like to go back to the culture element, because this is so important. And what I like about what Shell is doing and some of the things you are doing is that you're creating these internal networks that are not just data scientists, not just IT folk, is the entire business. So there's a business lead, you're reaching to the C-suite, and to have those conversations, which I think is so important. And one of my clients is Walmart, and what they did really well is that they created these constant conversations about how AI and data can be used in their organization. And what they did is they created these, in their headquarters, they created this physical data cafe where anyone in the organization could turn up, grab a cup of coffee, sit down with a data scientist, and have a conversation about, okay, how could I use data in my organization? Or they would come with a business question, said, this is a question I would like to have an answer to. How can I help? How could I get an answer to this question? And then you have a conversation and a bit of hand-holding, and I feel that lots of organizations have tons of data. They have data scientists, and they're creating this bottleneck, whereas in Walmart what they're trying to do is they're actually trying to transfer some of those skills across. Instead of one extreme, you have this data science team that gets swamped with all the questions, and they can't ever serve it. And the other extreme is where you have this self-service environment where they say, we have a great platform, we have all the data, we have a huge data lake, good luck finding your answers yourself. And I think in Walmart they created this really nice hybrid. Yeah. And the other thing that we did in Walmart, which I think Shell is now also taking very seriously, is creating this role of this data translator. So it's someone that is not a data scientist, someone that is not just a business person, but someone that spans those two disciplines. And those people play really crucial roles in, again, creating this culture and awareness and engagement around data science and AI.
I totally agree. I mean, we've done something very similar. It's a bit different for us because we have such a globally distributed business. I mean, you saw some of the assets on the screen behind me. The tough thing there is actually that's where the action happens. And so the question we had was, how do we get our people, the data scientists who are based in London and Amsterdam, to the action? And so what we've done is we've created these hackathon events where we parachute in a team of data scientists for a week, and we ask the business to bring their problems, and we work together on what we call a minimum viable product, which we try and get out by the end of the week. And it doesn't always work. You know, I talked about failure. We failed on a lot of these hackathons, but what they come away with is a better awareness of how they can use their data to drive business value. And some of the most amazing successes have come out of that. We were talking earlier about the lubricants labels example, which was one such example for us, which was we had a bunch of analysts who spent their whole time playing spot the difference with labels to make sure that when our products went out the door, they had the right labels, whether it was in Chinese or in Mandarin, or whether it was in German or French or English. And what we've been able to do is use machine learning to automate a lot of that spot the difference work that goes on. And the transformative effect on that team has been amazing, and they're now so receptive to AI. So like I said, some things don't work, but the ones that do, they really transform the culture and the awareness within the organization.
Yeah, no, for me, this is a great example of a quick win, which will really help to change the culture in the organization. There's some amazing strategic long-term use cases around predictive maintenance, and I think one of my favorite use cases is actually automating the drilling.
Yeah,
do
that's
you
right.
want to share some of that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, one of the things we were thinking about was what are Silicon Valley doing and how does it apply to our industry? And if you look at self-driving cars, it's amazing how far that technology has moved. I'm sure people have been to the cutting edge stage and hearing about some of that at the conference. But we were trying to say, can we take that and apply it to drilling? So can we have self-driving drills? So the role of the geosteerer is basically to move the bit through the drilling process. And actually, it's a fairly intuitive process, but it's based on an understanding of the physics of the subsurface and how the drill bit is moving. And we felt that was pretty analogous to what the self-driving cars were doing. It's complex, things change, but actually, if you can do it on the surface for cars, can you do it in the subsurface for drilling? And so we've been using deep reinforcement learning to train this based on a simulated three-dimensional model of the Earth. So effectively, we created a synthetic world in which we could then train the drill, just like we train the cars. And now we're applying that across the Permian Basin to all the drilling that we're doing, which is making our drilling safer, but also more effective and efficient.
Yeah, great example. Very good. Okay, 2 minutes? Excellent. So, but it gives me a chance to summarize then a little bit. For me, I think the key message is every business now needs an AI strategy. Your AI strategy has to start with your business strategy. What you don't want to do is you don't want to automate an outdated business model. So lots of organizations that I work with then realize that they have to rethink the way they operate, rethink what business models they want to run and what strategic priorities actually matter to them. Once you've done that, you then identify a small number of real strategic use cases, like the drilling, like the predictive maintenance, and then you also identify a number of small quick wins that really help you gain buy-in, like the automatic labeling checker, which I love. And once you've done this, you then look at the entire use cases and identify a data strategy around this. You identify a technology strategy around this. You identify your skills strategy around this, your ethics strategy around this, and then you have something that you can put on a single page. I actually end up quite often creating a roadmap for organizations where we design this data strategy and put this onto a single one-page visual framework saying, this is the business strategy, these are the use cases, this is how they all hang together, and this is how they will drive your business. And these are the key things you need to do. And this, for me, is a really powerful enabler of digital transformation.
I totally agree. Yeah, and maybe from my perspective, I think that the challenge of doing it in reality is having that North Star, but also being a bit like a ship, because sometimes things don't work, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to adapt and tack, and we've learned as much from the things that we've got wrong and the ones
completely.
that didn't work as the ones that did. And so I think that's the thing. Don't be afraid to try things and to fail.
Absolutely, and this is such an important point. Try it out, and adjust your strategy. It says this is not a 1, 2, 3 year strategy. This is something that you have to readjust every 3 months, especially in such a fast-moving field as AI. So, very good. Okay.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, both. Please join me in giving a hand to our panelists here.
Thank you.